Yeah, Conchi on the right hand side for Alpecin-de-Koning, and he's desperately trying to fight for the front and spring things out. And well, it is more like just an off-road climb, isn't it? Rather than anything that is producing surprises. But it's hard enough, isn't it? This, remember, 1.3 kilometers long, 9.6%, and gaps.
No, definitely hard enough. Look at the splits happening here already. Mark Hirschi, and is it Conchi?
Conchi left-hand side, yes, in the blue jersey. Italian who was very, very good on Wednesday in the Giro del Veneto. Alpecin-de-Koning, we talked about teams being good at the start, in the middle of the year, and at the end, like UAE. Alpecin-de-Koning, not necessarily as stage racers, but as stage winners. Now challenging the likes of Quick-Step, a team that's done this sort of thing for the last 10 years. And look at Conchi go. We've already seen how good they are off-road in these gravel races we've been having. Gianni Vermeer's the world champion, up there again, third place in Serenissima Gravel the other day, and Conchi looking so strong, looking at how to ride, where to ride, and he's finding those sections to try and reduce the risk of a puncture, I guess.
Yeah, getting on that concrete gutter as well on the inside here, so less rolling resistance, a little bit more traction as well. And here comes Formolo. So now two riders from UAE chasing the Italian from Alpecin-de-Koning. Formolo goes past Hirschi, and they're up over the steepest part of this climb, but still drags up a little bit more for a while yet, and Hirschi can't follow the wheel of Formolo.
Just under 10 Ks to go. Formolo, remember, on home roads, looking to try and catch up, and Hirschi, remember, he was up with Conchi here.
But you see the difference between the two is it really that Conchi is able to stay on that concrete strip, riding really close with his pedal next to the gutter, his body next to that sort of open face of hillside that's been cut in. And Formolo always out onto the gravel, and they're just losing a few metres. Now he's more comfortable on that concrete strip, and he's closing the gap.
So we're left with two at the front for now. Remember, there's a bit of descending to come at the top of this. This is a wonderful little addition. 10 seconds, we're being told. Proper off-road racing stuff.
A mini Tour de Finestre.
It is. The Giro d'Italia organisers might be looking at this and getting excited. Route to be announced, remember, tomorrow. You can watch it on our platforms that you usually see the racing on. Plus, you can tell your friends, tune in to the GCN Racing YouTube channel. We'll be announcing some very special things about where you'll be able to watch all of the Italian racing next year. Give you a little clue, just about everywhere.
We just saw Hirschi there. He's also riding on that concrete strip, but he just rode himself into a big pothole and lost a heap of speed, really checked his speed there. Losing traction, saves it. So look how steep that is through that corner. You see him slipping out left, right and centre, Hirschi, but he's got them in his sights, and he's actually coming back to the front of the race.
Good to see some late season form for Mark Hirschi, who hasn't quite discovered that top form in his 2 years at UAE that we saw when he was what was Sunweb, winning those stages in the Tour de France. And it looks as though we're heading for a trio, and look at this, huge tall trees left and right, gravel roads on the estate of this fashion brand. It's a very Italian scene, isn't it, as we come over the top?
It is, but I tell you what, hold your breath if it's going to be that same sort of marbly gravel all the way down, because this is going to be extremely tricky. They're already having trouble with traction on the uphill. Racing down gradients like that on a gravel road, it's really a case of risk-reward.
We've been uphill on the diesel farm, going downhill now as Mark Hirschi wants to make his own move here. Looks to try and find that position, but it's not that simple, is it? 9 seconds on the chasers.
Into that right-hander.
All the while, you've got to pray there's no mechanical here.
Yeah, and he should be rating his chances to ride away from the other two and get rid of Conchi on the downhill. So Hirschi, he is a good descender, but it takes one tiny mistake on a descent like this on this road surface, on this gravel surface, to bring yourself undone. He's opening up the gap. He is taking the risks.
Looks as though the surface was just changing through that corner as well. I'll have a different look, but look at this from on high. Spectacular. Now the first chasers. A bit of a group coming behind. Initial chaser looks to be from Lotto Soudal.
Kron,
who rejoined the group, remember, as Vermeersch was away. And that surface change, still gravel there. Slightly different shade of it, more, I think, gravel and concrete rather than the earth we had at the top. Different coloured earth. Now a group of, what, 7, 8 riders, including the 19-year-old home rider who we've been talking about in that green jersey, Francesco Busato, from the General Store SZGB team. The man who's going to Intermarché next year, and you suspected it might happen. Here she has ridden away.
yeah, he was intent on getting to the front to take control, and then started taking the risk. You saw just a couple of lengths open up back to Conchi, and he's ridden off into the distance.
Formula's job here, I guess, is just to act as an anchor. So off most of the gravel he comes. It was briefly back onto the normal road. Here he goes, away onto the road again. So the gravel's out the way for Mark Hirsch, who has a narrow lead. So he's been up through the diesel farm, down out of it, and now he's on his way to Bassano del Grappa. One more little launch pad to go. That's 500 meters long and at 11.5%. Comes around 5k from the finish, I think.
Well, you'd think at the moment that the winner is going to be decided by Conchi himself. He either gives up the chase on Hirschi and he wins, or he just goes 100% to catch Hirschi and then gets jumped by Formula on that last hill, and then Formula would win. But I think Conchi has found himself in a really difficult position here, and I think he has to almost make the decision to just put everything on everything, see if he can chase down Hirschi and fend off the attack by Davide Formula if and when it comes.
Yet to win his race in his pro career is Nicola Conchi, but he's come close on several occasions. This year he's had a few second and third places in different races in Slovenia, Arctic Race of Norway. Top 10 on Wednesday in the Giro del Veneto. Chasing a man, though, who's won at the very highest level. Mark Hirschi, a winner of La Flèche Wallonne, a winner in the Tour de France. Well, that was in his miraculous 2020, wasn't it? Third in the Worlds that year as well. And on the podium in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He has refound winning form this year, the Tour of Tuscany and in Aargau in Switzerland. Starting the year up per sempre Alfredo. It has been a comeback of sorts, and Italy's been very important to Mark Hirschi this year, who's still only 24. He's got 10 seconds now on this group, being led by Nicola Conchi. And as you were just explaining, Robbie, and as you've been explaining throughout the race, the number's so important for UAE.
Yeah, they've played it to perfection, and they've gone at times where the others wouldn't really have expected them to go. They've been in control. They've got some of the strongest climbers in the race, but they've been content to go on the attack on the flat as well and keep everybody guessing at exactly what their tactic's going to be. But Mark Hirschi, he was completely confident with his descending skills. He just had to get himself to the front in his way past Nicola Conchi, and then he could go flat out on the gravel downhill and look over the shoulder. Tells him that it's not over yet. The gap is extending. It was 8 seconds, now we're up to 13 with 5.5 kilometres to go. At Hirschi, he will not be resting easy just yet. Down into time trial position, as close as you can get to it these days anyhow, with the UCI regulations that are in force. No more hands draped over the handlebars. But it's a mano a mano. And sitting in third position on the road, Davide Formolo, he may at some stage start to think about the podium position and the heat that's coming from behind. And the chase at the moment, last we saw, being led by Andreas Kron of Lotto Soudal.
5Ks to go then. 3 riders at the front, 17 seconds separating the leader and the chasing 2. This is that final little climb of the race, uncategorized, but it's where it goes uphill for 500 meters. And here's she climbing in the drops here, one of 3 riders who are set to be, as it stands, the podium. Let's see. if this is to be the podium, none of them will have been born on the day that today's retiree, 51-year-old Davide Rebellin, began his professional career in August 1992. Formolo is now trying to make sure it is a 1-2 on the podium for UAE Emirates. And for those of you who missed it earlier on, yes, Rebellin today ends a 30-year career. 12 teams down that time. He's going to finish today 15 years after his 19th and final Grand Tour. 6 years after his last monument, of which he rode 46, winning in Liège in 2004. At that stage, he said he could see himself doing 3 more years. Well, here we are in 2022, 18 years later, and Rebellin retires behind here, as we've got a young Italian who might be about to join his teammate Mark Hirschi, because Davide Formolo could be up here with an opportunity to win at home if Hirschi can't keep the gap to his teammate.
Yeah, well, we said this was a distinct possibility that Formolo would use up Conchi and go on the attack, and Conchi had no answer. As soon as Formolo went, Conchi looked over his shoulder, say, well, who else is coming? Because third's about as good as I can do today against UAE, who've had everything under control all day long. Now Formolo is trying to ride his way across to Mark Hirschi. 7 seconds the gap. At Hirschi, he is holding a really good rhythm, very strong up that climb. A full attack by Formolo up there. You'd think this would stay the order in, unless Hirschi gets the idea that Formolo's on his own and they can ride in with the two of them.
Formolo has him in sight as he looks behind. I mentioned Davide Rebellin. I know a lot of you will be tuning in a little later today. There's been a lot of other cycling to watch, certainly over on the track. And it was at the start of this race that we had that image in the neutral zone of the man they call Rocha here from this region. Formolo riding out the neutral zone with Rebellin, having that long conversation. Rebellin a month older than Jens Vogt and Lance Armstrong, the man who won the Ardennes Triple but 18 years ago in 2004. And a reminder that 4/5 of this peloton weren't even born when Rebellin won his first pro race in 1992. Rhythm is a Dancer was #1 in the UK when he turned pro, and it was a year before the first internet browser, I should say, was invented, Mosaic. Rebellin has seen so many changes down years, perhaps more than any other rider in the history of the sport. And today, he's going to be part of a race that is going to see 3 young riders taking it to the front. Here is Nicola Conti, who's at 30 seconds now. 23 seconds further up the road is Davide Formolo, and a further 7 seconds up the road from this man is the lone leader Mark Hirschi. 3 kilometers to go for the Swiss. It looks like being a 1-2, unless there is some sort of dramatic change here, Robbie.
Yeah, and I'm not expecting a dramatic change unless someone has a very untimely mechanical. Mark Hirschi, well, obviously not going to wait for Davide Formolo. Just 7 seconds between them, and look over the shoulder, but no easing off on the pedals for the Swiss. He wants to get the win, and as you mentioned before, Rob, yeah, off that phenomenal season a couple of years ago when he was riding with Sunweb, wins in the Tour de France, multiple stage wins, had a really tough time last year. He had an injury, he was out with illness. He's finding his form again. It'd be good to see him get back to the form that he showed when he was with the Sunweb team a couple of years ago. But at the moment, Formolo, he's the local man. He'd love to get back up to his teammate and say, hey, listen, what do you think about me winning in the area that I live in?
9 seconds though now, it's drifting again. This is a really fascinating internal battle. One thing that looks to be sure now is that it's not just going to be Jumbo-Visma who are the top dogs in terms of wins. We know that down the years, it's certainly for the last decade, also been Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl, hasn't it? They have 47 wins. Of course, they're no longer racing here. Jumbo-Visma have 48 wins. They've ended their season. The team at the front with the 1 and 2 at the minute have 47. Jumbo-Visma are about to be joined right at the top of the tree. We're heading into the very beautiful and scenic Bassano del Grappa. And it's Mark Hirschi, who is just over a kilometre away now from taking victory. In fact, 1K to go for the man who is on his way to win number 4 for the season. And this now should be his. Formolo just behind. A man who's worked so hard for his team. In fact, he's become more of a worker, hasn't he, in recent times. Been a while since he was winning big races himself. 2 years since his last win in the Dauphiné. When they come, they're generally big ones. As it's just about held up right there by Hirschi, who's just a few hundred metres from the line now. It's going to come down to this scenic old bridge. And it's one of the most stunning finishes in professional cycling. Through that final corner. Thankfully, we haven't got a big bunch in here, because that would be a scary prospect, I think.
Well, he's not holding anything back, is he? I mean, it's been clinical by UAE, but Hirschi, he's gone with them on the climbs, but he's opened the gap up by taking the risks and having the skills on the technical sections of the course. He's going to grab the win.
Mark Hirschi then with one final uphill to the line. 4.5 hours of racing. They've been on 2 different circuits, on all sorts of surfaces, in one of the biggest and most important cycling regions in the world. It has been a spectacular way to end 2022. And right back on the top of things, just as the season ends, is Mark Hirschi as UAE equal the top number of wins this year. Jumbo-Visma have company, and it's also a 1-2 for UAE Emirates as Formolo finishes second.